Okay. Good. Okay, good morning everyone. We are starting something a bit different today, just for 2 weeks, for today and next week. I called it the Personal Growth Seder. Seder. This is coming up in case you haven't noticed. In case you forgot, just now the Seder is. So let me just tell you what I wanted to try and do today and next week. So the Seder, as we know, is not one of the most, probably the most kept Jewish experience, and so it should be. It's for a good reason, because really goes back to our foundation as a people. The Exodus from Egypt was really when we became a nation. That's how we became a nation of Jews. Until then, we were taught that we were just descendants of similar people, but we weren't actually intrinsically connected and a unit and connected with God at the same time. And that's what happened. The prophet Michoel refers to the Exodus from Egypt as the birth of the Jewish nation. That, and of course later on the Sinai revelation. And then, of course, every single generation we re-experience that concept every year. Around Pesach, we've talked about this many times, that we have this concept of Yetziat Mitzrayim, the Exodus from Egypt, being more of a spiritual thing, not just commemorating history, but being a thing where we actually re-experience it and we tap into the energy of personal redemption, and personal going out of our own Egypt. So, how do we connect to it? How do we connect to the powerful energy of the Seder? So it's two things. One thing is obviously connecting with the rituals of the night. Spiritually speaking also, we matzah, shmur matzah, and we drink 4 cups of wine, and so on, we say Haggadah. That's how we connect into the whole experience properly and spiritually. But it also comes through preparation, and we need to understand, we need to know, we need to have depth and understand what it actually means, what some of the things mean, and what's the significance, how it applies to us, and so on and so forth. So, what I wanted to do is 2 things. Obviously, I want to talk about some of the amazing personal growth lessons from the Seder. Some of them we've done before, but we'll revisit them properly. And also share with you some insights into the Seder. We'll do a little bit what we did. Remember, we had that, I think it was a 4-week series where I took things and I asked you what the reason when you told me what you learned way back in school, and then we upgraded it a little bit, right? Call it upgrading our consciousness. So I don't think we did Pesach then, but we'll try and do a little bit with that as well. So that's what I want to do today and next week. So today we're going to focus on preparation, setting up the Seder, next week the actual Seder. So hopefully it will add some depth and some meaning to your own Seder. Okay, so the first thing is, the first concept, right? Again, this is all about the theme of personal freedom. So freedom, let's define freedom first of all. So freedom, we talk about going out of our own Egypt and becoming free and tapping into the concept of freedom. So we know that freedom by Jewish definition is not free to do what we want. That's called slavery actually. When we give in to our own temptations and indulgences and weaknesses of personality, and we say to people, just accept me the way I am and this is me, and so on and so forth, that's prison, that's not freedom, right? That's being trapped and caught in our own inner prison. Whereas freedom means the freedom, the understanding, the ability we have to choose and to go beyond our natural personality and to grow and to do things because they're right and because they're healthy and because they're spiritually effective and make us a better person and the world a better person and so on and so forth. So that's the concept of freedom, and we upgrade this every single year when we go out of our own personal Egypt, right? Now that has a number of stages. So we have the preparation for Pesach, being as important as the Pesach itself, because what it is, it's the concept of letting go, preparing, right? Now what do we let go? So you know that we let go of chametz, right? We in the house, we get rid of the chametz and so on and so forth. So just to give you the understanding of it, the way we do it is by, we clean and we get rid of the chametz, because on Pesach we're not supposed to have chametz. Chametz is considered a very big problem on Pesach. Anything that is made out of 5 grains, wheat, barley, rice, spelt, and oats, those are the 5 grains. And anything that's made out of them and has risen, that becomes what we call chametz, and that's something you're not supposed to eat on Pesach. We're not only supposed to eat, we're actually supposed to get rid of it, we're not supposed to own it. And that's done different ways. One of the ways is like, the place where we eat, we try and clean it and get rid of it. And if we store in chametz, we try and not own it. The way that's done, incidentally, is because this developed over time, a mechanism how not to own chametz. If you store in chametz, like alcohol, a lot of alcohols are chametz and so on and so forth, like whiskeys are chametz and so on. So the way we do it is we sell it. It's a whole halachic mechanism. Different organizations do it. You can do it online with us as well. You fill out a form authorizing the rabbi to sell your chametz to a non-Jew, just so you get the picture of how it actually happens. So the non-Jew comes to my house on Erev Pesach, and we do a whole legal transaction. He gets all the forms, all your forms that you sign, and he gives it. It's a whole halachic mechanism how he actually does it. That it's actually a transfer of ownership. In theory, it's his, when it legally is his, when Pesach comes, and then he can come to anyone's house and take whatever he wants in terms of chametz, or whatever he takes, he's owed the balance, he's got to pay the balance. It's never happened to my knowledge, they actually don't come and do it, and then after Pesach he comes to my house on Motzei Pesach, and we have a good discussion. I say to him, well, let's finish the business, because you only gave the deposit, but now you have to finish paying, or if you're not interested in finish paying the balance, you can sell it back to us. Normally agrees. And
Rabbi, is it the same person every year that you use?
I use, not always, but I've used not the same person, because he knows the deal already. So I use there's a maintenance guy at Kesset Torah, I know. We spoke last week, so I'm not working. I normally make it, it's actually good for him as well. He's very, very happy to help. Like he feels so good because he thinks, nothing is. He's helping the Jewish community, and he takes it very seriously. Plus, I'll give him a gift and extra money and so on. So it's always worth it well. But yeah, that's done. So that's why he actually he legally owns the chametz that we store away, and that chametz which we sell we're supposed to put away, so it's not accessible, like we put in a cupboard or in a room that we're not going into, whatever the case is, right? People do this actually with the entire household. People go away for Pesach. Like last year I went away for Pesach, I was in South Africa for Pesach, so we didn't wait. We didn't do anything, I didn't put anything away. Just locked up the house and put it on the phone. I didn't do the sale last year, someone else did that because I wasn't here, but yeah, so you could do with anything as long as where the chametz is. The idea is that if you sell chametz, you have to put it away because it's not supposed to be freely accessible, because then we make a mistake, we're confused, since we do it all. You come down the stairs and there's a box of wheat bix there and it's on the table, and that's what you do every morning. Then you might come to do it on Pesach too, so that's a problem. But that's what's got to be put away. That's the idea. But it can still be in your house, just you can't own it. Yeah. Okay, but spiritually speaking, what is this concept? The concept is that we know, and we can go into it a bit more, that the difference between chametz and matzah is matzah represents humility, whereas chametz represents ego, because it rises, an unhealthy sense of self, right? So we know that in order to go out of our own Egypt, in order to grow, in order to become free, to achieve inner freedom, we have to let go of ourselves and our own ego. Because the more we get trapped in ourselves, the more impossible it is to grow and to redeem ourselves, right? So therefore, step one is always to let go. And in fact, in the process, in the journey of personal growth, in the journey of inner freedom, letting go is the hardest part. Just to digress for a moment, we'll come back to it later, but one of the mitzvot of Pesach night is the 4 cups of wine, right? One of the reasons for 4 cups of wine It was when God told Moses to go and redeem the Jewish people from Egypt. He told him 4 expressions of redemption. I will take you out, I will save you, I will redeem you, and I will take you as a nation. Right? And if you examine those 4 expressions, you'll see that 3 out of the 4 expressions is more about what he's going to take them out from more than what they're going to become. In other words, the first 3 expressions is, I'll take you out of Egypt, I'll redeem you from Egypt, I'll take you out of Egypt, right? In other words, all about running away from Egypt, and then only the 4th one he says, and then you'll become my nation. So it's interesting that the 3 of the 4 expressions is about letting go of the past. Only the 4th one is becoming something new, which of course is the purpose. The purpose is not just to let go, the purpose is to become something different, right? But you can't become something different as long as you have a connection to the negative past or the negative ego, right? Particularly when it comes to Pesach. You see, growth is something we do all year round, hopefully, but Pesach is about a quantum leap type of growth. So I'll just share with you in this context. What does the word Pesach mean? You know? Yeah, Passover. Why is it called Passover?
He passed over the houses that...
Because God jumped over the houses, right? When he killed the firstborn, he skipped over the houses of the Jewish people when he put the blood of the crop on Pesach, Paschal Lamb, and so on. Incidentally, do you know that in the Torah it's not called Pesach? Do you know?
No. What is it?
I promise you, I'm going to give you some just interesting facts as well as personal growth lessons, but it's a very famous thing, it's a very interesting thing. The word Pesach comes from a different thing altogether. It comes from the lamb that was brought before Pesach as the sacrifice, or the sacrifice of Pesach. Paschal Lamb, yeah. But actually this festival is not called Pesach. We call it Pesach. What does God call it? Chag HaMatzot. Now, the question is, I'm just digressing now, this is a very nice idea. The question is, why do we call it Pesach and he calls it Chag HaMatzot? So it goes like this. Because the relationship between God and the Jewish people is, God praises us, we praise him. He loves us, so we love him. So when it comes to the Torah, the word matzah comes from because when we left Egypt, we left to an unknown destination. We didn't know where we were going, we didn't know what we were going to have to eat, and God rushed us out of Egypt. He said, you've got to leave now. Right? So what happened? The Jews prayed prayer, but didn't have time to rise, so it was matzah, right? So the word matzah is actually a testimony to the faith of the Jewish people that they were ready to do this. They were ready to follow blindly almost. They were ready to follow Moses into a wilderness that they didn't know where they were going, and chop a bit of dough quickly and make a matzah and leave, right? That's why God calls it Chag HaMatzot, to compliment the Jewish people, so to speak, for doing that. But we in turn don't do that. We don't credit ourselves. We call it Pesach because we thank God for jumping over the houses and for saving us. So Pesach is the compliment to God. Chag HaMatzot is the compliment to the Jewish people. So we call it Pesach and he calls it Chag HaMatzot. Right? Interesting. Okay. So this is the concept of actually letting go. Now, in order to understand this, let's understand the contrast. So we let go of the chametz, but instead we eat matzah, right? Because it's not about just letting go of the ego, it's about embracing the concept of surrender, of humility. So let's talk about matzah. Okay. Crash course here. We've done some of this before, but I'm going to show it to you with people. Matzah is the most beautiful thing. So matzah represents, the concept of matzah doesn't rise, right? Now, the idea of matzah is that it's made out of the same stuff as chametz. You realize, right?
Yes.
Exactly. In fact, you can only make matzah out of the same thing you make chametz, right?
Yeah.
It's just that in other words, it's the same human being, right? Spiritually speaking. It's a human being who potentially has an ego, but we let go of the ego. And we eat matzah. Matzah means it doesn't rise. So matzah is the ultimate symbol of humility, of surrender, right? The great philosopher, the Maharal of Prague, says something very fascinating. Because we eat matzah to remember the time the Jews left Egypt, right? Now we know at the Seder, there are certain symbols of freedom, like matzah and wine, and there are certain symbols where we remember the bad times, like eating a bit of herbs, right? The maror. So matzah is one of the symbols of freedom. So the Maharal of Prague, the great philosopher, asks the question, and he says, that's really strange, because if you look at the Torah, it calls matzah poor man's bread. Lechem oni, bread of affliction, poor man's bread, right? Bread of poverty. It's very plain. In fact, you're not allowed to add flavor to the matzah. It's got to be flour and water, right? That's all it's supposed to be. Nothing there. No ingredients. Egg matzah is no good for the Seder, right? Ashkenazim don't eat egg matzah. Whole place, but that's a separate halachic discussion. But for the Seder, it's definitely not okay. right? Because you're supposed to have to mitzvah matzah, it's going to be just plain matzah, just wheat and just flour and water. Should be shmura matzah, by the way. Good time to remind everyone. If you don't have shmura matzah, let me know. I'll arrange you for the Seder. But he says that's really strange. So why is it called poor man's bread? It was supposed to be a symbol of freedom. So the Maharal of Prague develops this amazing concept. The concept of positive poverty. What does positive poverty mean? Poverty is normally a negative thing, right? But positive poverty means in our personality that the first step to grow, when we're stuck with ourselves, when we're stuck in our own ego, we can't move. In order to move, we've got to actually we've got to undress ourselves, we've got to strip ourselves of self completely. Now we have to replace that later with a sense of good self, healthy self. But you can't get to egocentric self, to good self, unless you pause in the middle, unless you actually embrace, unless you completely strip yourself of everything that's you. And that's what matzah is, right? Now, just take it a little further. So we know matzah and chametz are made out of the same stuff, as we said, right? Not only is it made out of the same stuff, it's very much the same letters. I don't know if you realize it, right? So I'm going to show you something amazing. The two letters that are the same in matzah and chametz is mem and tzadik. Okay, now, just a little crash course on the mysticism of Hebrew letters. So we know that letters mean all kinds of different things. One of the systems we have in studying the letters of Hebrew is a concept called atbash. Atbash means, at means aleph, taf, beis, bash is beis and shin. What does that mean? It means we say that the first letter is interchangeable with the last letter. So aleph and taf can be interchangeable, right? With me?
No, say it again.
No. So we have an order of the letters. So the alphabet goes aleph, bet, gimel, daled, right, until the letter taf, which is the last letter. So we have this concept that on either side they're interchangeable. So aleph is the first letter, taf is the last letter. They can interchange.
Oh.
Right? So in an aleph is also hinted at taf, and a taf is also hinted at aleph. That's how it works, right? Second letter, bet, is interchangeable with the second to last letter, shin. So bet and shin are interchangeable. Now, shin, that's right. There you are. Modern application. Yeah. And so on. Now, the letters mem and tzadik, if you use the system of atbash, then mem is interchangeable with the yud, and tzadik with a hey. Who knows what's yud and hey? God's name.
God's name.
Right? So maybe yud and hey in itself can be Hashem also, right?
Yeah.
Just yud and hey. The full name is yud and hey and vav and hey, but the yud and hey is also, right?
Also, yeah.
Like Halaluka, we say at the end of the year. So, by the way, that's also the word mitzvah, you realize, right? Mitzvah is mem tzadik vav hey. Mem tzadik is yud and hey through the system of Atbash. So every mitzvah is actually the full name of God, yud and hey, vav and hey. Right? It's pretty interesting stuff, this. Right? But so mem and tzadik is God's name, or at least hinted to God's name, right? Because mem and tzadik are interchangeable with the letters yud and hey. Which now begs the question, right? Because in matzah, we get God's name. But we're talking about Pesach now, right? On Pesach, chametz is supposed to be so terrible. It's a real prohibition to eat chametz on Pesach. Right? Not just about eating matzah, it's about not eating chametz, right? Not engaging with the ego. So how does God's name fall into chametz then, right? Same letters. Is everyone with me?
Yes.
Yeah. So the answer is like this. The answer is the difference between the chet and the hey, because one's in red. Okay, chet and hey are fundamentally different. We'll soon see. And not only the difference between chet and hey, it's where they are. So chet represents ego. And the difference between a chet and a hey is a tiny bit, right? It's just this little bit here. That's it. You take it over, right? If you create a small opening in the chet, you get to hey. So first of all, it represents a couple of things. Number one, even a little bit of ego is very destructive, right? That's why matzah not allowed to rise even a drop. That is complete surrender. No ego. Let's get rid of the ego, at least on Pesach, right? That's what it symbolizes. because that little bit of ego is in the chet, is hinted in the chet. Where is the chet in chametz? It's in the beginning. In other words, it represents, I put myself before God. Right? That's what it's chametz. So yes, Mem Tzadik represents God's name, but chet comes first. You put yourself in front. If you live your life with you the center, or I'm the center, that's chametz. You can say, I do stuff for God too, but then it's not really God. Whereas the hey is I put Mem Tzadik first. Matzah, I put Mem Tzadik first. God comes first. And therefore I'm able to surrender to Him and be in His hands. Now, what's the significance of that little space? So, the Torah, the Talmud says like this: both chet and hey actually have an aspect to them that represent real failure. Why? Because both have a empty bottom, you see? Right?
Yeah.
Which represents falling out. Right? What's the difference between the chet and the hey? Chet is someone that's egocentric. When they mess up, too bad. No point of return. They're so trapped in themselves, they can't come back. They can't admit I made a mistake. See, humility doesn't mean that I'm always connected to God and I never do anything wrong. That's not a human being, that's an angel. Right? We know that. We've talked about that many times. Human beings fail. We fail. It's part of the journey. But there's a huge difference when we fail with humility and we fail with ego.
Is a head a narcissist?
Well, maybe. It's not as bad as a narcissist. Even a little bit of ego can be problematic, not just narcissism, right? So chet is the person who won't, either they won't acknowledge that they failed, or if they do fail, they say too bad. They'll never apologize, they'll never make amends, they'll never reconnect. They'll never try to rebuild a relationship. They'll never, right? That's it. Because I am who I am. So if I fall through the bottom, too bad. Right? Hey is humility. Hey, I can also fall, but I know where to creep in back. I know how to come back in. It's a window of coming back in. And the Rabbi, I just learned this part I actually learned yesterday. Rabbi points out, I always do this idea, but then he points out a very interesting thing. He says, in order to make a chet a hey, you don't need a big space, a tiny space, right? Because when we grow and we go beyond ourselves and we fix mistakes, we just need to go beyond ourselves a little bit. That's the sign of humility. To push ourselves a little bit. Not huge things, just to grow a little bit. That's what Yetziat Mitzrayim means. Going to Mitzrayim means we go out of ourselves just a little bit. Right? And he links it with the Midrash. The Midrash says, when it comes to the concept of Shuvah and reconnecting to God and so on, God says, I help you, but you have to want to let me in. And it's a beautiful Midrash that says that God says to the Jewish people, He tells them, Pitchu li, beautiful Midrash. He says, open for me an opening as tiny as the tip of a needle. And I will open for you a door that is as huge as a hallway. Right? But you have to start. You have to make that little door. It can be tiny. But that little door is tiny, but it shows that you're humble. It shows that you're not trapped in yourself. It shows you're ready to start the journey of creeping back in. It's a beautiful idea. Does that make sense?
Yes.
That's the difference between chametz and matzah. So the first part of Pesach, therefore, is we're going to start, number one, acknowledging the ego. We have to acknowledge that we're trapped sometimes. Sometimes we have to acknowledge that we're in Egypt, our personal Egypt. We're trapped in Egypt. The word Mitzrayim, as we've talked about many times, means Meitzah, means narrowness. That we're trapped we're constricted in our own self. And we have to be ready to begin. We have to be ready to eat the matzah on Pesach. But we only eat the matzah on Pesach. You can't have it both ways. So therefore, we start acknowledging the chametz before Pesach. We start getting rid of it. We start selling it. Whatever we do before Pesach, searching for it the night before, whatever the mitzvot are, and then we're ready to sit down to the Seder and embrace full freedom. Embracing full freedom means to embrace humility, to embrace selflessness, to embrace what the Maharal Prague calls positive poverty, which in other words, to strip ourselves, to surrender. Now, surrendering doesn't mean I lose self completely. It does mean momentarily, because as I said before, we can only embrace a good positive self if we let go of, it's like a seed, right? When you plant a seed in a tree, to grow a tree, we know that that's what happens. How does the seed become a tree? It actually disintegrates first. It becomes nothing. When it becomes nothing, then you can replace that with a completely different reality. Right? It could be a tree. The same thing with us. We have the Omer period that goes after, like we don't eat matzah all year round. We actually do eat chametz afterwards. In fact, chametz becomes a mitzvah. We eat challah on Shabbos, right? In the temple times, there was a sacrifice that was brought on Shavuot, which was a mitzvah to be chametz. It had to be chametz. It had to rise. Which is kind of funny. I mean, all of a sudden, Pesach is a terrible thing. 6 weeks later, it's a great thing. I mean, what's going on? The answer is because God created us with a self. He created us each with our own talents, with our own competencies, our own strengths, with our own contributions, our own uniqueness, and so on and so forth. There's a tremendous amount to say about self. But not when it's connected to ego. So what's the process? The process is matzah. We get rid of our ego completely. Positive poverty. We have nothing. Nothingness. No taste, nothingness, doesn't rise, nothing. Then we start a period of self-development, which is the Omer, after Pesach, until we reach out to Shavuot, where we reintroduce the self, but in the context of connection to something higher. In the context of growth, in the context of humility, in the context of being ready to go beyond ourselves. That's how the formula works. Make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Now, how do we do all this? And that's the foundation of freedom. That's how we become free, by letting go of ourselves a little bit. Right? How do we do that? So we come to the Seder night, and we have the Seder plate. And I want to spend some time giving a bit of depth to the Seder plate, right? So you understand the Seder plate. So the first thing we do is we have 3 matzot. Why do we have 3 matzot? Many, many reasons. Anyone know the reasons why 3? No. The point was that you're actually very intelligent. Just didn't do maybe enough learning until now.
Is that what the Afikoman?
Yeah, it's got to do that. I'll tell you, it's actually very interesting. Because things happen in Judaism, things that, again, it's just interesting stuff, so you can learn this. But things happen in Judaism on many levels. So very often we do things that have very big spiritual significance, but they actually start off from a halachic reason. And the halachic reason works like this, very simple. Why we have 3 matzahs. It's a very simple halachic reason which people often don't know. And that's the origin of 3 matzahs, in fact. So every Friday night and festival, when we make Kiddush, we have, how many challahs? We have 2, right?
2.
And those 2 are supposed to be 2 complete challahs, right? That's the idea, 2 complete challahs. Why?
We know
2, sorry?
We know that.
Yeah, you know, I know. Yeah.
It's repeated it often.
Right, you have 2 challahs. Well, very reason why it's 2, but that's 2 challahs, okay.
Well, then we have 3 then.
When, on Friday night?
3 matzah.
No, I'm going to get to it. So every Shabbat and every festival we have 2. That's got to do with the man, because the man in the desert doesn't fall on Shabbat, or festivals, they fulfill double portion the day before, so it's got to do with a lot of things. Okay. So the halakha is supposed to have 2 complete challahs, or 2 complete matzahs for that matter. On Pesach night, we have an additional concept. And that is that we have to have a broken piece of matzah on the table. That's why, part of the Seder is we break the middle matzah, right?
Yeah.
Why do we break matzahs? Not because we want to be destructive, but because it's part of the same idea as humility, same idea of poverty, because matzah is called poor man's bread. A poor man never has a complete loaf. Again, tying it into the positive poverty idea, that we're not whole, we realize we're not whole, there's something much bigger, right, outside of us. That's why we have to break the matzah. And in fact, we're supposed to break the matzah quite early on in the Seder, right? We make Kiddush, we wash our hands, we eat a parsley or whatever, we eat a vegetable, and then we break the matzah before we say the Haggadah, before we say the Manishtanim, right? Because when we tell the story, we're supposed to have a broken piece of matzah on the table. But it's Yom Tov, and Yom Tov you still have to have two whole matzah. That's why you have 3. To have 2 whole ones and 1 broken one. Okay? That's the simple halachic reason, but there's many, many spiritual, mystical reasons that they all go together. So one of the ideas is because we have 3 patriarchs, Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, and we have 4 matriarchs. That's why we have 3 matzahs and 4 cups of wine. That's one of the reasons, right? There's deeper idea in that also. We'll get to that. But there's also, we know that Pesach was the time that the 3 angels came to Abraham to give him the news that Isaac will be born, and Abraham ran into Sarah and said, "Please make some ugot, cakes," which the Midrash says is actually matzahs. And he said to her, "Take 3 measures of flour and bake 3 matzot," essentially. So that's what happened on Pesach, so we have that. So it's got to do with that the Jewish nation is divided into three parts: Kohen, Levi, and Israel. Right? So there's many, many reasons why 3 months. Okay. But also, mystically, and we're going to see this in a second, the 3 matzahs represent the 3 layers of cognition: Chokhmah, BINA, and Dat, which we've talked about many times. Right? Chokhmah and Dat. Okay. Now, why is this important? Because we're going to see that together with we have 10 powers of our soul, correct? We've said this many times. Now, the Seder is about freedom, but freedom comes from a very core essence of our soul. Freedom comes from the ability to surrender and give up ourselves and to go beyond ourselves. That's what freedom is. But it needs to be then internalized. It's not good if it just lives at the depth of our soul. Freedom has to be expressed. The first place where freedom gets expressed is in our mind. Remember Ida Diga, right? That was the foundation of freedom. She says that the mother told her before she left to the camps that they can take everything away from you, but they cannot take away from you what's in your mind, right?
Correct.
In other words, Viktor Frankl talked about it as well. He said in his mind he was free. He was like, physically he wasn't free. So freedom begins in our mind. We have to think about it. Giving up ego on an emotional level is very difficult, but the first place that has to happen is in our head. Right? Just realizing that we're not the center of everything, realizing that there's much more beyond us, realizing that there's infinity beyond our finite, fragile self. Right? All that kind of stuff. Where does it begin? It begins in the mind. If it begins in the mind, it's got to be properly comprehended. And how it's comprehended? It's got to go through the 3 stages of cognition, which is Chokhmah, BINA, and Dat. Right? Because then, what does that go together with? It goes together with the Seder plate. Now, there's many ways to lay out the Seder plate. So, to give you a little bit of an insight here, how many things are on the Seder plate? 6, right? 3 matzahs, and then the plate itself.
Double.
Sorry?
3 and 6, double.
No. 3 and 6 is 9, plus the plate
What's the plate?
is 10.
10.
Which represent the 10 powers of our soul. I'm going to show you how in a second. Right? But that's Kabbalistically how the Seder runs. That we have 10 things because we're going to try and experience freedom on the place of night. And the idea is to try and then bring and implement the freedom on all levels of who we are, of human experience, which is not just the 3 layers of cognition, but then has to travel into emotion and be implemented in action, right? So how does that work? So there's different ways to lay out the Seder table. The one at the picture I've got here is the way the Arizal said it should be laid out. And I'm going to go through it with you and explain each thing, and then explain how it corresponds to the first 6 emotions, right? So, on the right top corner there, it's 3 triangles, you see that? It's not such a good
Where's the
picture.
triangle?
So, those 2 on top, right hand and left corner, and then this in the middle, right? And then again, the same thing.
Yeah.
So on the top right hand corner is the shankbone, which is Ra, right? Left top corner is the egg. Yeah. Then in the middle you have either lettuce or grain, something that fits into the concept of the bitter herbs, which is eaten later at the Seder, right? Then the next triangle, the right hand side is charoset, right? Which is, for Ashkenazim, it's apples and nuts and stuff like that. Sephardim, it's dates and something else, whatever. It's the idea of a cement type of thing, right? On the other side is the karpas, which is, over here it's an onion, but it doesn't have to be onion, it could be a potato or parsley or whatever the case is, right? And then the bottom is again another portion of either lettuce or grain, which we then eat later on as a sandwich with the matzah, right? Okay. Now let me just run through what each one here represents very quickly, and then I'm going to show you how it works mystically in terms of the layers of our human experience, right? It's very deep. Yeah.
What's the one on the left?
This one?
Looks like an onion.
Yeah, it's the vegetable. So the karpas, so either an onion. This comes from a Chabad website, and Chabad eat onion as the vegetable. Other people eat potato, parsley, something like that. It has to be a vegetable. That's the idea. And that vegetable gets dipped in this water. So we'll talk about it. Let me just run through each one so you actually get a bit of insight of what they all mean, right? So the shankbone is there to remember the Paschal lamb, right? And by the way, it doesn't have to be a shankbone from the lamb. It could be some people are accustomed to have other things. For example, in Chabad we have a chicken neck. Whatever, it's a piece of bone and meat essentially, and it's roasted. It's all to remember how they used to bring the Korban Pesach, the Paschal lamb, in the time of the temple. Right?
Can it be drawn?
No, that's supposed to be real.
So we don't need.
You know what I mean?
No.
Chicken.
Anyway.
I can send you a piece if you want. I have a neighbor who's a vegetarian. I give him every year. I give him this roll. Anyway, okay. On the left-hand corner is a roasted egg. Now, the roasted egg is just another cooked item to remember. Well, there's two reasons why I have an egg. To remember the second sacrifice. There was at the time of the temple. There was another sacrifice they used to eat by the Seder called a festival sacrifice, a korban chagiga. It was one brought on a festival because of the festival, which was eaten before the Paschal lamb. That's why we have the egg. Now, why do we choose an egg specifically? So there's two reasons. One is that egg is actually a symbol of mourning.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. Why is that at the Seder? So there is a bit of a theme at the Seder that there's a tinge of sadness at the Seder that we don't have a complete Seder because we don't have a temple and we don't have the sacrifice, we don't have the Korban Pesach and so on and so forth. Okay, that's one idea. But I think I want to share with you another beautiful, beautiful idea of why the egg. You know that I'm saying it to some of you because I learned in South Africa the egg was like a big deal at the Seder, right? And by the way, it's not such a big deal. It's a custom. I mean, all customs are big deals. But we should just make sure we place a bit more emphasis on eating the matzah than the egg, because the matzah is the real mitzvah. I know South Africa is cut up and salt water. It's like a whole big deal, right? Nice. Okay, so why is such a focus on an egg? So there was a Hasidic Rebbe, who happened to be a descendant of actually, called Ishbitzer Rebbe. He has some fascinating insights. He has a Haggadah, a commentary also, which I got a few years ago, and I read some of the stuff. He says the following: an egg is a very unique, and it's got to do with the whole process of coming out of Egypt and personal freedom. An egg is a very interesting food, because an egg in its own is a ready-to-eat food, right? You can make an egg, you can fry an egg, you can hobble it, right? On the other hand, by definition, an egg is actually something which symbolizes that it's actually not ready yet. What is an egg, essentially? It's to hatch into a chicken, right? So on the one hand, it's a perfect thing as is, and yet it's something that represents it's actually incomplete. There's still a way to go, really. Right? He says that's the whole idea of coming out of Egypt. And he says it in a bit different context, but let me explain to you how it applies to the personal freedom journey, right? Because we have this idea that every year we keep Pesach. Now, how many times can you go out of Egypt, right? And the answer is all the time, because today's redemption is tomorrow's Egypt, right? The idea is always to grow. So grow means we grow a little bit more than we used to. We go out of our comfort zone. But when you go out of your comfort zone and you adopt a new practice, a new way of living, after a while that becomes your comfort zone. And then you've got to go out of Egypt again. Because that's the purpose of the human being. As long as we're alive, as long as we're around, we have to keep. And that's why, by the way, at the Seder, we actually say this. We say, B'chol dor v'dor, which I know is used as an expression for lots of different things, but in the Seder it says, every generation we need to see ourselves as if we are going out of Egypt ourselves. What that means spiritually is, it's not only B'chol dor v'dor, it's B'chol every year, really, every day. Right? We're always continuously growing. We always grow. Now when we grow, that stage, that step, is like an egg. It's complete, it's beautiful, it can be celebrated. It can be eaten, fried, boiled, but we know that it is perfect now. But it still has to grow into a chicken, in other words, it has to keep going.
Yeah.
So, you follow? In other words, that's the idea. So that's very symbolic of the purpose of the Seder and the purpose of Pesach in general. Okay.
I thought it was fertility.
An egg, yeah, maybe. But not, I don't know if that's connected to the Seder necessarily, but maybe.
For fertility, the next thing. The next stage.
Yeah, next thing,
fertility.
yeah. Also, many layers, many layers.
But do
Okay.
you have to burn the egg?
Some people do this, a custom you don't have to. We don't, for example. We just boil it.
And the shank.
Yeah, this is why. I'll tell you why. Some have that custom. Yeah, the shank bone you're supposed to, not burn, you're supposed to roast.
Okay.
Roast means like you put it in, like on top of the stove or something, with no water, just the truth.
Plain.
Some of the custom, I actually do it on a proper like barbecue thing. But it doesn't have to be. It can be on the stove also, but it should be like roasted, but not pot roasted, but also with liquid. It should be roasted like the Paschal lamb was. So some people say the egg should also sort of should be because that second sacrifice was also roasted in temple times. That's why like they burn the egg a bit, but you don't have to. Most people don't. So just save your job.
But it's interesting that the non-Jews have the egg thing as well. Like
It's Easter.
They have lots of things that do from
Easter
us.
they do. It's not.
Everybody eats eggs.
I don't know why it symbolizes.
Yeah, but we insist that everything's plain, you see.
Symbolizes life.
Yeah,
I guess so.
Easter is for life, yes, and the Greeks also. Greek is the egg, it's about life.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So that's the shank bone and the egg. Now we also have the mitzvah on Pesach night to eat maror, right? Maror is bitter herbs. The idea of that, of course, as we know, that we remember the bitter time. That's of course part of the appreciation, part of the praise, part of the gratitude, is not to forget where we came from, and therefore we need to remember where we were. There's lots of other symbolisms we'll get to maybe in the next week, but that's why we eat maror. And we put two of them on the Seder plate because one is to eat maror on its own, and one is to put in a matzah sandwich, right? Then we have the charoset. The charoset is, it's lots of things. It's like a cementy sort of thing, which is to remind us of the mortar and the cement that was in Egypt, but it also is made out of ingredients that represent the strength of the Jewish people, because Jewish people are prepared to dates, we're prepared to apples for various reasons and so on, and that's why we have the charoset. Now, what we do is we dip the maror into the charoset, which is interesting, because we eat maror to remember the bitter times, right? At the same time, we dip it in something sweet. Now, by the way, you're not supposed to drown it in the charoset. You're supposed to dip it in it. Afterwards, you can eat the charoset and the matzah and put it along with it. But you're supposed to dip it a little. Why? So there's an interesting idea, the many ideas. One of the ideas is, it's also a reminder to us that when we go through times of challenge, which we do sometimes, we have to also try and identify the moments of sweetness, even in the challenges. And the Jewish people had that. They were able to give birth, they had big families, they raised a nation. So there was sweetness even in the challenge, and therefore that's one of the ideas of dipping the maror into the charoset. And then we have the vegetable. What's the vegetable? The vegetable is, vegetable is a very interesting thing. There's a custom on Pesach night that we eat a vegetable to. Sorry about that. Alright. So after we make kiddush, we wash our hands, or at least one person washes hands, and we dip the vegetable in salt water. Now, what's the reason for that? Anyone else?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, that's true. But again, actually it starts with a sort of more halachic legal reason. And the reason is that we do things on Pesach night to arouse curiosity. Because one of the myths, the context of Pesach night is communicating the story to the next generation, right? That's Adin Manishtan and so on. So you want to do things that are different, so that the children ask questions. They get, like, that's symbolic of why you're doing it different, to arouse the spirit of exploration, right? So when we make kiddush on Friday night, what's the next thing we do? We wash and eat bread. So Seder night, we should wash and eat matzah. We don't. What do we do? Before the meal, we have a bit of vegetable. So the child must know what's this all about, right? But we do also have the idea of tears. That's the idea of salt water. And one sort of idea about a vegetable, and this is the power of the Seder night. The vegetable is in the ground, right?
Yep.
Different from a tree that grows, but a vegetable is normally stuck in the ground. Pesach night is a very special energy. That if someone wants to grow and someone wants to achieve connection on Pesach night, we are taught it doesn't even need that much. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter where you think you are. It doesn't matter how much you failed. Pesach night, just like in the times of Egypt. You know, the Jewish people had sunken into the very deep levels of impurity, it says, right? And God came and just whisked them out. So to every year of Pesach, God gives us a gift on Pesach night. We just tap into it. He gives us a gift of freedom, and He gives us that energy to be able to make that commitment to grow and to become free internally. No matter where we think we are, no matter how stuck we think we are, Pesach night, we can do it. And that's the idea behind the vegetable. The vegetable grows in the ground. So even if you think we're stuck in the ground, Pesach night, the vegetable becomes a very important piece of food. It becomes on the Seder plate. So it shows you it doesn't matter who you are, you can become part of the Seder experience. Okay, so that's a little bit about each. I mean, it's not small, of course, but that's a little bit about each item on the Seder. Now, apart from all that, the Seder plate represents the first 6 emotions that we have. I'm going to show you how. So we know that we have 3 levels of cognition, right? And then we've done this many times. We go through the 6 emotions. 6 emotions go also in 2 triangles. We have Chesed on the right, Gourarie on the left, Tiferet. And then we have the 3 supportive ones, which we've talked about before. I'll go through them quickly now as well. Netzach, Hod, and Yesod. I should have put it up on the thing. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention. Now what is it? So chesed is on the right. Chesed always represents giving, connecting, loving, expansion, flexibility, all those things come into the idea of chesed, right? Now we know, as we've talked about many times, there's good chesed, bad chesed, there's chesed with ego, chesed without ego, and, right? Selfish chesed, selfless chesed, human chesed, godly chesed, there's different. Okay. So we have to achieve freedom in all these things. So that's the zroa. The zroa is the top right. Zroa means, the word zroa, which we translate as shempon, is an arm. It's a giving thing, right? It's like God, He redeemed us with an outstretched arm, it says, right? That's what represents the concept of chesed. Right? Yes. The left top corner is an egg. An egg is Gourarie. What's Gourarie? Strength. But also we define Gourarie many times as chesed is giving, but Gourarie is discipline. It's the idea of holding back. It can be bad Gourarie also. It can be aggression, or you reject someone, or you don't give, etc., etc. But that's part, or it can be good, like discipline and self-control and so on. Right? So that's an egg. Is anything round is like Gourarie. Round meaning it's self-contained. It doesn't go outwards. It moves inwards. Right? So a circle is a concept of Gourarie because it holds everything inside. There's no opening to go. That's the idea of Gourarie. Right? So that's the egg. The egg is Gourarie. The lettuce in the middle is Tiferet. Now you remember Tiferet is a combination of Chesed and Gourarie. It's like synthesizing Chesed and Gourarie together. So what's amazing is like this. We eat the lettuce because it's bitter herbs, but in fact there's different ingredients you can have for maror. You can have horseradish, which is strong, but the main one is actually lettuce. It's not real. It's actually it's cost lettuce actually. It's cost lettuce, right? Well, they call American romaine lettuce, but the one we have here is cost lettuce, right? Now, cost lettuce actually is not that bitter, if you realize. It's bitter at the root, but the leaves actually have a kind of sweetness to them, right? So it's a combination between bitterness and sweetness, which is the idea of tiferet, combining the chesed and the Gourarie, right? Then we go to the lower three. The lower three is Netzach, Hod, and Yesod. Netzach and Yesod means Netzach is the idea of ambition, strength, overcoming difficulties, overcoming obstacles. That's what's on the right side, the same size, the same thing as Chesed, right? Because Charoset is made out of things, it's made out of fruit. Fruit grows from a tree. A tree represents strength, ambition, overcoming obstacles. That's Netzach, right? The left-hand corner, left the bottom triangle, is the vegetable. That's the opposite. That's Hod. Hod is humility. Because you've got to balance ambition with humility, otherwise it doesn't work. And that's why the vegetable grows from the ground. That's a symbol of humility. And then you have the third one, which is the sixth of the six emotions, which is called Yesod. Yesod means connection. I'm ready to connect to other people and to express these emotions. Because these emotions are all within ourselves. That's what we feel. But then you have to make a connection, right? You have to make a connection to the outside world. And that takes a combination of Chesed and Gourarie, Netzach and Hod, and that's why it's again the lettuce which represents the middle, which is combining everything, and the ability then to connect it and connect to something else. So those are the six, right? So we have the three levels of intellectual, which is the three matzahs. By the way, which is the one you break?
The middle
one, because it's Gourarie. Because Gourarie needs extra control. Gourarie can very easily derail. They can all derail, but Gourarie is, right? So it's like BINA also BINA. Why do you break it? Because when we talk about it in the layers of intellect, so Chachma is the conception of an idea. BINA is when you break up the idea into many, many parts. That's also the idea of breaking the little matzah. That's the idea of breaking into understanding from different angles and so on. Okay, that's just by the way. So we have the three levels of intellect, then we have the six emotions. And then what happens is, there's 10 powers of the soul, right? The 10th one is represented by the plate itself. We say the plate, it's a physical plate. Why? You remember when we discussed the 10 powers of the soul, that the 10th one is called Malchut. Right? Leadership. What does that mean? Malchut is not an emotion on its own, but it's like the feminine power of our emotions, which is, it absorbs all the other emotions and gives birth to it. Right? What does that mean? So many times we can develop really, really good and pure ways of thinking. We can even go so far to develop healthy emotions. We can have love, we can have discipline, we can feel the need to discipline, we can feel the need to love, to give. Very often, however, it doesn't happen. People are good full of good feelings. They really are so worried about someone else and really want to, I don't know, love God, love other people. They're really ambitious. They feel ambitious, but it doesn't happen. It's not implemented, right? What's the difference between a leader and an academic? They might be both as smart, right? The academic, it's all left in the world of intellect. It's not actually implemented, right? A leader is someone who can take. A leader also has to have a good chacham, a good BINA. A leader has to have, wants to run a country, it's got to have intelligence, got to have emotional help, and so on. But what makes the person a leader is the malchut. That's why it's called leadership. Because malchut means that it absorbs all of that and is able to follow it through, is able to give birth to it, right? And maybe that's why the actual plate is the most important part of the whole journey, because it's all very good to be free in our mind. It's very special to be free in our emotions, because that means it's really becoming part of who we are. But it doesn't mean that's going to happen. It doesn't mean we're going to put it into practice, right? Because after the Seder night, when we decide to make a commitment to grow, we might even be very, very enthusiastic about it, very excited about it. On an emotional level, we might feel completely free. And then the day after, someone insults us and we get all upset. So we haven't put it into practice, right? We have to go beyond ourselves a little bit. Or we have good intentions of doing something good, doing another mitzvah, whatever the case is, and we're just not going to make it happen. But that's why freedom on all levels means we also put everything into our plate. A Seder plate. Plate is like that malchut that absorbs it and then makes it happen. Right? Internalized words. That's the concept of this. That's the mystical significance of the Seder plate. 3 matzahs, the 6 items, which are the 6 emotions, and then the plate itself, which is the idea of malchut. Now, all this is really, really important and very connected. I'll just finish with this. Very connected to the concept of Yetziat Mitzrayim, going out of Mitzrayim. Because what is Mitzrayim? Mitzrayim is narrowness, constrictness, right? We're in our own prison. Now, in Kabbalah, it talks about another type of Mitzrayim. It says that Mitzrayim refers to what we call in Kabbalah, the Meitzar, we did this once, the Meitzar Hagarot, the narrowness of the throat. I'll show you that. Remember that idea, narrowness of the throat? What is that? Yeah, but our physical body represents a spiritual journey. That's how it works, right? So the head is the intellect. So intellect is something that's not hard. It's not hard to become free in our mind. I mean, it is, but it's possible, it's attainable, it's very easy. You learn, you study, you think, you reflect, you're honest enough, right? But cognitive dissonance is very common, right?
Yes.
So we understand things, but we don't put them into practice. We learn about how bad it is to become angry, we become angry. We learn about whatever, right? All that kind of stuff. We learn how it's not good to be jealous, but we're still jealous. What happens? What happens is that, I'm just telling you what's to do with the word of Mitzrayim. What happens is that we learn about it, we understand it, which is already a great step, but we're still in Mitzrayim, because we learn in Kabbalah that for emotions, for cognition to become emotional is a very difficult step. That's why physically there's a very narrow path between, there's a throat. Kabbalah calls it the narrowness of the throat. And often it gets stuck there, it doesn't come down to the heart, which is the seat of emotion. Why? Because emotions and ideas are totally different, they're very different. Ideas are objective, they come from the outside and process, they're very detached. Emotions is me, it's my personality. So for something detached, which I have in my mind, which I can hold in my mind, it's not a problem, right? But to travel down and to be transformed and transition into emotions is a very, very difficult step. And sometimes it doesn't happen, it gets stuck in the throat, which is Mitzrayim. You get the narrowness of the throat. One more point. Who was the king of Mitzrayim? Paro, right? In Hebrew words are always so amazing. If you take the letters of Paro, it makes Ha'oref. Oref is the neck. Same part of the body. Right? Because when are you in Mitzrayim? Even if you've been open to new ideas, even if you've internalized those ideas in terms of cognitively, intellectually, you're not out of Mitzrayim. You might still be in the narrowness of the throat. You might still be in the narrow throat, which is Meitzar, the narrow part of the body, which is the throat, ruled by the neck, which is Paro. And Yetziat Mitzrayim means, going out of Egypt means you're able to take it down, make it part of your personality, and then implement it, which is represented by the plate. Right, so we put all the things in the Seder plate, we got rid of the chametz, now we're ready for the Seder, and the Seder will go through next week. Okay, so next week we'll go through.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.